Well, people often mispronounce the title as Necropolis. I mean, I hear that at least once a day, but I've gotten to like it because, in a way, it is a necropolis. It is a city of the dead as well as a city of intoxication. So, in a way, when I hear the word Narcopolis, I hear the shadow of the word necropolis. So, it's fine with me if you call it Necropolis. Well, another thing that people say about the book is that it's a book about drugs. And I'm always so disappointed to hear that. Because of course it's a book about drugs, but you know, it's the drugs are kind of like a hook on which you hang your coat, or a frame in which you paint some scenes. It's a lens from which to view Indian society. So, I mean, it's okay if you call it a book about drugs, you know. I mean, we all need an easy kind of label. It's like if you go into the music shops today, there's jazz, there's rock, there's folk. And if you make the kind of album that fits in none of those categories, the music shops don't know what to do with you, and the record labels don't know what to do with you. You know. So, I mean, it's really a question of labels. That's my serious explanation. About a year after I started working on it, I started to work on a book of non-fiction, a book on Indian religions, and then I had a month in a very beautiful house. I had a residency, a month in a house with very expensive art on the walls, and you know, 3-course meals with 4 different types of wines. And I'm not saying that was the cause of it, because you know, I was very poor in those days. So suddenly I was in this life of unimaginable wealth, and something happened, and I wrote a chapter that was very clearly fiction. And that chapter is a walk on Shuklaji Street, which happens about halfway through the book, Narcopolis. And that just started something. It opened a vein, and then the rest of the book kind of followed. And in fact, the opening section of the book, the prologue, was written much after the rest of the book had been done. Yeah, it was written much later. So, yeah, I work like that. I did have to research them, and it was very hard, but somebody had to do it, you know. And I researched it for 20 years. I like to think of that time as a kind of embedded journalism, you know, deeply embedded journalism, profound research. But no, at the time I had no idea it was research. It was just life. Yeah. Not much at all. In fact, I tried to keep myself out of it as much as I could, because I have always found that kind of autobiographical fiction uninteresting in a way, you know. I find it much more interesting to see a work of imagination or craft. But the autobiographical element is absolutely part of it in the details. And those details, I could never have come up with those details if I hadn't seen them for myself. So I think that's the way, it's a tangential way that the autobiographical part of Narcopolis works, but there certainly is a part. You just have to look hard to find it. It's disguised and submerged under layers of other things. It was my intention to make it anything but autobiographical. I didn't want to do that, because there are a lot of autobiographical first novels in the world, and I just didn't want to add to that list, you know. There's plenty. Yes? Yeah. In fact, some of them, the names haven't been changed. Same names. Of course, they're all dead now. 90% of the people from that world that I knew are no longer here, because That's the nature of that world, you know. You are not, longevity is certainly not a part of that world. No, they didn't. Absolutely not. In fact, there's a picture by the photographer Pablo Bartholomew of Bengali, who's a character in the book. And I saw that picture last year, and it was the first time I'd seen Bengali in about 30 years. And it was astonishing in a way to see that. But the connection between Bengali and his namesake in the novel is incredibly tenuous. Absolutely. I mean, they have some things in common, but I think their inner life, I'm sure the real Bengalis was far more interesting than my literary reimagining of it, you know. But that's what we do, you know. It's fiction. It took a long time. I'm not the kind of writer who knows exactly what the novel will be like before I start work on it, beginning, middle, end, and then just starts and it all flows. I begin to work on it, and then the story reveals itself to me. And that's what happened. It took, I think, about 5 years in all until the book took its final shape. And I think that was a very useful time. That was very useful that I could spend some time on it, you know, and didn't have to rush it. No, I was doing many other things. I wrote a book of poems. I wrote an anthology of poetry. I did an album with my band, our first album, STD, with my band Sridhar Thayil. Quick plug. Our website is stinkmusic.com. Sridhar Thayil is S-T-I-N-C, S-T Inc., stinkmusic.com. Check us out, we're excellent. And I wrote a libretto for the opera group in London, called Babur in London. So I did several things. Well, the person who holds the story together is the character of Dimple. And she was based on somebody I saw in an opium den in 1981 or so. Just saw her, I think, 2 or 3 times, and she was making pipes for the owner of the den. And there was something about her that absolutely caught your attention. And I never forgot her. And when I came to write the character of Dimple, that was the image that was in my head pretty much throughout that time. So, she was charismatic and quiet and self-possessed and very good at her job. And she was there for 2 or 3 times, and then she disappeared, as people tended to do in that world. You know. People appeared and disappeared. That was just the way it was. Well, yeah, that's what fiction does. You know, you say what if and where to, and then you fill in those blanks. And that's what makes fiction. You know, you imagine. Which is why, if it's purely autobiographical, I think it's, I mean, unless it's a memoir and you're going to make it a memoir that lives and has depth to it. If you're writing fiction and it's purely autobiography, it just is not very interesting, you know. The great autobiographical fiction has never been pure autobiography. James Joyce's short stories in Dubliners, they seem autobiographical, but they're not autobiography. They are absolutely crafted pieces of art.